We're going to begin our proposed millage rate public hearing. We will have our CFO, Ms. Ramona Bivens, to present. You are presenting, right? Okay, so please take the podium.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner. Today we're having our second required public hearing on the proposed millage rate. Each year, the Board of Tax Assessors is required to assess the property values and do a reassessment if the fair market value increases. They're required to do that by law. Once that's done and they present us a final digest, we have to compute a rollback millage rate, which is a millage rate that produces the same total revenue on the current year's digest that last year's millage rate would have produced if the reassessment had not been done. In other words, it would be revenue neutral. And state statute requires us to advertise the current year digest in the 5-year history, as well as hold 3 public hearings if the millage rate is set above the rollback rate. The tax assessor did send out assessment notices in April and May for real and personal property. The appeals deadlines were in June, in mid-June, and a little later in June. And we received a lockdown digest on June 30th. However, there was some numbers that need to be adjusted due to them going to a new system. So they revised it and sent us a final one on July 14th, 2021. At that time, we did calculated everything and did the rollback rate, determined what the rollback rate was, and determined that we would need to have public hearings because the millage rate would be set a little bit above that rate. Once we got that, as you can see on this slide, we continue to see an increase in the digest. The gross digest increased from $9.4 billion to $10.3 billion. It's about $833 million increase. Once we apply the exemptions, we have an adjusted net digest of $9.2 billion, which is an increase of $829 million over last year's net values. And this slide shows the increase. As you can see, since 2016, property values in the county have increased. I showed the gross, the exemptions, as well as the net. And so that trend line shows how the net digest property values have increased over the past 6 years. Also, these values for this year, they exceed the recession, pre-recession. We're back actually even higher than where the values were pre-recession when we had the housing market crash. This slide shows the increase by categories. So we continue to see increases in our real and personal property values, as well as values in other categories, of course, except for the motor vehicles, which we continue to see decreases due to the implementation of the TABT. Our real property values increased by a little over 8%, or $847 million from last year. And as I stated, the decrease in motor vehicles, as people are buying new vehicles, they're no longer subject to the ad valorem tax, or the birthday tax as we call it. So it's down $61.8 million, a little over 15%. It's down to $61.8 million, a little over 15%, or $12.4 million less than last year. This decrease is also offset by TABT taxes, which are now paid at the time of purchase, and the state does a true-up and sends us some money to try to offset that. Also, mobile home values have remained relatively stable with a slight increase in the past 2 years. Timber is still at 0, and then we had a decrease of approximately $2.3 million in heavy-duty equipment. We're recommending a millage to reduce the gross millage rate to 18.535. This slide shows that on the far right, we are showing the millage rate from 2016 to the present. As you can see, we have decreased each year slightly, except for 1 year. 2018, 2019 remained the same. Then last year in 2020, we reduced it some, and then this year we're recommending reducing it even further due to the increase in the property values. So we recommend a gross millage rate of 18.535, which is 0.627 less than the previous year, and that's a little over $500,000 lower than last year. After we apply the sales tax credit of 3.789, which is lower than last year's due to the increase in property values, the proposed net millage rate will be 14.746, which is 0.343 lower than the previous year's millage rate of 15.089. This is the lowest millage rate we've seen in the last 8 years. And although this millage rate is lower than last year's, it is 0.868 higher than the rollback rate of 13.878, which again is why we're required to have these public hearings, because we're not going to the rollback rate. So with a net millage rate of 14.746, that's the amount, that's the millage rate that would generate the revenue, tax revenue, to support the budget that the board unanimously approved back in June. So again, this would be 18.3535, which is less than the 19.162 from last year. After applying the sales tax credit, the net millage rate goes to 14.746 versus 15.089 last year. Although we're not required to hold public hearings for the maintenance for the fire district millage, I did want to show you that as well, because you do have to approve that millage rate. That varies as with the regular M&O. It continues to increase. The digest continues to increase, as you see here on the trend line. The increase for this year, the values are up by $767 million, or 11%, from 5.7 to 6.5, and I'm sorry, it's 13.6%. The growth digest is up 11, but the net is up by 13%. This shows the millage rate history for the fire department, and as you can see, for 4 years there, we had at the max of 5 mills, and in 2019, we reduced it to 4.906. I'm sorry, 2020. Last year, we reduced it to 4.906, and at the last meeting, we were going to recommend maintaining that millage rate and not changing it at all, but we actually looked at it again and realized that we can actually lower that millage rate and maintain the fire department's operations at the same budget level by lowering it to 4.75 instead of do 4.906. So like most residents, including myself, we want to know, well, how does this affect my property? So this slide is one that we use all the time. When this is what we use when we had the advertisement, the average fair market value is $150,000. And once you apply the assessment, you only assessed at 40% of your fair market value. And then those people that have homestead residents, they get the 10,000 homestead exemption, so the net taxable value would be $50,000. So at the rollback rate, this shows what the homeowner would pay if we were to go with the rollback rate versus the proposed rate of 14.746. So by going with the proposed rate, those that live in the incorporated areas would pay $43.40 more than if we went to the rollback rate, but it's $17.15 less than last year because we are reducing the millage rate. For those living in the unincorporated areas or those that live in incorporated but receive fire services from the county, their millage rate, the proposed method, their taxes would increase by $56.55 on a home value of $150,000. However, it would be $24.95 less than last year, again due to rolling back, going to a lower millage rate. On the commercial side, we use a $500,000 as the average fair market value. This shows what the business owner would have to pay on the assessed value of $200,000. They would pay $173.60 more for the proposed rate if we don't go to the rollback rate. And this is for those living in the incorporated area. And it is $68.60 less than it was last year. And then if they live in the unincorporated area and also receive fire services from the county, they would pay $226.20 more than if over the rollback rate, or $99.80 less than what they paid from last year. Oftentimes we're asked how the residents are bearing the burden of the taxes. And I just wanted to show this slide, and we've had discussion before, that the residential values are 42.9% of the net digest, which is what we tax on, and that was that's for 2021, and the commercial is at 56.3%. So they would be paying 56.3%. Commercial would be paying that in taxes versus 42.9% of the taxpayers. And then the 0.2% is agricultural, and 0.7% is other, which is the the conservation preferential and motor vehicles. And that shows for 2020 and 2019 as well. And they relatively remain the same, around 57% commercial and 42%, a little over 42% for residential. So tonight at the board meeting, on the agenda is a resolution to adopt the millage rate for 2021 tax year, which supports the fiscal year 2022 budgets. We're requesting that the gross millage rate be set at 18.535, and I show here a comparison from last year to this year. Last year you see it was 19.162. After applying the, the fire district rate was 4.906, and those are 4.750. After applying the loss credit, we're requesting for incorporated, the millage rate be set at 14.746. And for those living in unincorporated areas and those that receive fire services from the county in the incorporated areas, their millage rate would be 19.496. Both of these are less than the prior years of 15.089 and 19.652. This is our second hearing. As I stated earlier, we're required to have 3 hearings. Our third hearing will be held at 6 p.m. this evening before the regular board meeting. And with that, that is all I have. I will yield the floor to the commissioners or for public comments from the.
All right, any questions? Thank you for your presentation, first of all. Any questions from the commissioners at this time? So just for me, for clarification, for hopefully the public, it's not a property tax increase. Only increase would be is if your assessed value of your home went up.
That is correct, yes. So the rollback rate, even though we're reducing the millage rate, the state statute, where the tax Department of Revenue requires us to calculate again that rollback rate, that would be never revenue neutral. And if we set it above that, it's considered a tax increase, even though we're lowering the millage rate. And if your values remain the same, your property taxes would go down because we're lowering the millage rate from last year. However, if your values increase, yes, you would see some increase.
Slight increase.
But not as much as if we had left the millage rate at last year's rates.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from board members? All right, at this time, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public, in the audience that would like to make any comments? Please come forward, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah,
I mean,
it's still morning. Feel like
11:13 this morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Vanessa Ennis, and so you said that, and it shows here. I was missing one of the slides, but it shows here that, of course, the millage rate is going to be reduced, and you indicated that property tax would not increase unless your property value increase.
That is correct.
Okay, and so all property values at this point, based upon it, is increasing. But the document that I got, I think I saw on Clayton County website, said that it was going to be a 6.5% property tax increase. Can you kind of give a little bit?
Yes, it's over the rollback rate. So, in the presentation, I discussed what we have to calculate a rollback rate, which is considered to be revenue neutral. And if we set the millage rate above that rollback rate, it's considered a tax increase, and it's 6.25%. And the state requires us to advertise that. Even though we're lowering our millage rate, we're not lowering it all the way back to that, what they call the rollback rate.
Okay. So we could potentially, because of what the market is looking like, pretty much everything is increasing in terms of property tax. So that's the part, that's the piece. I see where the millage rate is lower.
Right.
But I'm still not understanding what the property tax is going to be. So is it going to be a 6.5% increase, or is it, I mean, I'm not understanding, because I know the value went up. You said if value, and all property value went up.
So how it works is, if we don't go with the rollback rate and we go with the proposed rate, the state considers that a tax increase, because we would pay less if we went to the rollback rate. But because we're not going to the rollback rate, even though it's less than last year, it's considered an increase. So you would be paying more than if we went back to the rollback rate. It's kind of complicated. If you want to, I can sit down with you and show you on paper how it works.
Okay, but the vote is tonight?
That's
Yes,
correct.
ma'am. We can watch this when we leave here if you want, if we have time.
I'm still on my lunch break, but, yeah. And so what are we gonna do with the increase? I mean, because it's gonna increase. I mean, my property value has increased, bless the Lord.
So the millage rate that has been set supports the budget that the board approved back in June. It generates the tax revenue required to support that budget, which was, hold on, let me go back to the slide. There it is. $132 million in tax revenue. So in the budget that was proposed that the board approved, it included $132 million in taxes as part of the revenue to support that budget. And it's because of the increase in the property values that amount is higher than last year.
And that goes towards operations, personnel, services, and programs.
So that was gonna be my next question. What are we gonna do with that, with that increase, with those funds?
That's what we do, provide more services for the citizens and salaries.
It takes public safety, library, parks and recreation, all the departments that the county has. That money funds those departments.
Okay. Well, if you don't mind, so that I'm not holding people up, because my husband will come tonight with all my questions. I have something tonight, I can't do it, but can I get your number and maybe you can kind of give me some more information so he can be better prepared for questions? And then I can give you a call, because I've got more questions, but I just need to kind of really read through this to formulate. Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Sure.
Anybody else like to speak? Anybody else? All right, if there is no one else who would like to speak in reference to this, we will stand adjourned. Thank you. And thank you, citizens who braved the weather to come out to participate in this public hearing.